Hello, and welcome back to the Circular Economy Excellent podcast. I'm Henrik Hvid Jensen. Today, we are exploring chapter 9 of my book, where I discuss how circular business models reinvent value creation, capture, and delivery. To help bring these concepts to life, I have once again used AI to interpret my chapter through a discussion between two artificial minds. I wrote this chapter because the circular economy is not just about reducing waste. It's fundamentally transforming how business generate and retain value. Much like the digital revolution of the late 1990s, we are at the start of a massive shift in business strategy. Companies that recognize this early will shape the future, while those that resist will struggle to stay competitive. In this chapter, I introduced the circular economy strategy framework, a structured approach to helping manufacturers transition from linear to circular business models. I also discuss how a circular product accumulates more profit throughout its life cycle than a linear one. By maintaining value, circular models ensure continuous value creation from a single production cycle instead of one-time sales. This is a crucial mindset shift for businesses looking to unlock new revenue streams for the same investment. In today's discussion, my AI friends will talk about how circular business models shift from one-time sales to continuous value creation through long-term customer relationships, the different ways companies can capture value, such as re-commerce, refurbishment, and remanufacturing, why delivering value through service-based models like subscriptions and leasing can create recurring revenue and deeper customer engagement. How circular businesses outperform traditional linear ones in cost efficiency, resilience, and revenue potential. So sit back and listen as my AI co-hosts discuss why manufacturers must rethink value creation in a circular economy, and how those who adapt will lead the way into the future.
Welcome to another deep dive with us. We love getting into the nitty-gritty of all things circular economy.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
And today we're really digging deep into Chapter 9 of Henrik H. Hvid Jensen's book.
Circular Economy Opportunities and Pathways for Manufacturers.
That's the one. Such a great resource for anyone looking to, make that transition to a circular model. Now, this chapter really focuses on how the circular economy can, revolutionize how businesses create and deliver value.
Yeah, it's funny. We talk about the circular economy as this, new concept. But in a way, it's almost like a return to our roots.
How so?
Well, think about it. In the past, things were built to last, repaired, reused. It wasn't this disposable culture we have now.
That's true. It's like we've gotten away from the idea of valuing durability and longevity.
Exactly. And the circular economy is about bringing those values back, but with a modern twist. Leveraging technology and innovation to create systems that are both sustainable and profitable.
So it's not just about being green, it's about being smart.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where environmental responsibility and business success go hand in hand.
Okay, so let's get into the meat of this chapter. Jensen talks about 3 key aspects of circular value creation, capturing, and delivering. Can we unpack those a bit?
Sure. Let's start with creating value. In a traditional linear model, it's all about producing and selling as many products as possible, right?
Right.
But in a circular economy, the focus shifts to creating products that are designed to last, that can be repaired, upgraded, reused. It's about building lasting relationships with customers by offering ongoing value.
So it's less about transactions and more about building a service-based relationship.
Exactly. It's like shifting from selling a product to selling the benefit that product provides.
Okay, that makes sense. What about capturing value?
So this is where things get really interesting. It's about squeezing every last drop of value out of products and materials. We're talking about re-commerce, part harvesting, refurbishment, remanufacturing, all these different ways to give products multiple lives instead of just ending up in a landfill.
It's like the ultimate form of recycling.
In a way, yeah. But it goes beyond just materials. It's about capturing the value embedded in the design, the engineering, the functionality of a product.
And using that to create new revenue streams.
Exactly. And finally, we have delivering value, which in a circular economy is all about providing a service rather than just a product.
Give me an example of what that might look like in practice.
Sure. Take Signify, for example. They have this light as a service model, where instead of selling light bulbs, they sell the service of illumination.
Interesting. So they manage everything from installation to maintenance to upgrades.
Exactly. And because their revenue is tied to the service, they provide not the number of bulbs they sell, they're incentivized to make those bulbs last as long as possible.
That's a cool model.
Yeah.
It really aligns their interests with the customer's desire for a long-lasting product.
Exactly. And it's a great example of how circularity can fundamentally change the way businesses operate.
So we've got these three pillars of value creation, capturing, and delivering, all working together to create a more sustainable and ultimately more profitable system.
Precisely. And Jensen actually lays out 8 specific ways that circular business models can outperform linear models.
Let's get into that.
You bet. Let's dive in and see why companies are finding so much success with this new way of doing business. Okay, so we were talking about the 8 advantages of circular business models compared to linear ones, right?
Yeah, Jensen really lays out a compelling case in his book. I mean, it's not just about doing good for the planet, though that's obviously a huge part of it.
Right.
It's also about creating a more resilient and ultimately more profitable business model.
Exactly. And these advantages really highlight that. So the first one he talks about is more attractive products.
I mean, it seems kind of obvious, right? Consumers are becoming more and more eco-conscious.
Yeah.
They want products that are sustainable, ethically sourced, all of that.
And companies are starting to realize that, sustainability is a selling point.
Absolutely. Like, look at Adidas. They've had huge success with their Parlay for the Oceans collaboration.
Right. Those sneakers made from recycled ocean plastic.
Yeah. It's a great product, but it's also got a great story behind it. And that resonates with consumers.
It does. It shows that they're not just buying a product, they're buying into a company's values.
Okay, so more attractive products. That's number one. What's the next advantage?
Greater customer intimacy.
Okay, now this one I'm curious about. How does circularity lead to greater customer intimacy?
Well, in a linear model, the relationship between a company and its customer often ends at the point of sale, right?
Right, you buy the product and that's it.
Exactly. But in a circular model, the relationship continues throughout the product's entire life cycle.
So it's more of an ongoing dialogue.
Exactly. Companies are constantly gathering feedback from customers, offering upgrades, repairs, making sure that the product is performing at its best.
Sounds like a long-term partnership.
Exactly. And that builds trust, loyalty, all those things that are essential for a successful business.
Makes sense. What's the next advantage?
Reduce total cost of ownership.
Now this one seems counterintuitive at first glance. How can circular products be cheaper in the long run?
Because they're designed to last longer. And they're easier to repair, so you're not constantly having to replace them.
Okay, so you're paying more upfront, but saving money over time.
Exactly. And Jensen gives a great example in the book. He talks about SKF.
The bearing company.
Yes. They have this oil as a service model where the same oil can be used for 7 years.
7 years on the same oil.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible. They have this special purification technology that keeps the oil in top condition.
Wow. So that's got to save their customers a ton of money.
It does. And it reduces waste, which is obviously a good thing.
Okay, so we've got more attractive products, greater customer intimacy, reduced total cost of ownership. What's next?
Recurrent income sources.
Okay, so this is about generating revenue beyond the initial sale.
Exactly. Think about Nike's Nike Grind program.
Oh, yeah, where they take old sneakers and turn them into, like, playground surfaces and stuff.
Exactly. They're taking what would have been waste and turning it into a new revenue stream.
That's smart, and it's good for the environment.
Exactly. So it's a win-win.
What's the next one? Number 5 is increased resilience.
This is a big one, especially in today's world.
With all the supply chain disruptions and everything?
Exactly. Circular models are inherently more resilient because they rely on closed-loop systems.
Meaning?
Meaning they're less dependent on global supply chains and raw materials.
So they're less vulnerable to disruptions.
Precisely. And Jensen gives the example of H&M's clothing collection initiative.
Where they take back old clothes.
Right. They can then reuse those clothes, recycle them, or turn them into new materials.
So they're reducing their reliance on virgin materials.
Exactly. And that makes them more resilient to things like price fluctuations and supply chain shocks.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What's number 6?
Greater product and component utilization.
Okay, now this one I need a little help with. What exactly does that mean?
So it's basically about making the most of what we already have.
Like using products more efficiently.
Exactly. Think about all the cars that are sitting idle for most of the day.
Yeah, it's true. Most cars are only used for a small fraction of the time.
Exactly. So circular models like car sharing aim to increase the utilization of those vehicles.
Okay, so instead of everyone owning their own car, we share vehicles and get more use out of them.
Precisely. And the same principle can be applied to other products and components. It's about squeezing every last bit of value out of what we already have.
I like that. Okay, so what's next?
Reduce production times.
How does circularity achieve that?
Because refurbishing and remanufacturing are usually much faster than traditional manufacturing.
Because you're not starting from scratch.
Exactly. You're taking existing products and components and giving them a second life.
And that can save a lot of time and energy.
Absolutely. Jensen talks about how it can take up to 2 years to manufacture a new wind turbine.
Wow.
But a refurbished turbine can be ready to go in just 4 months.
That's a huge difference.
It is, and it means we can scale up renewable energy production much faster.
Okay, so we're getting close to the end of the list. What's the last advantage?
The last one is that circular models are inherently climate and environmentally friendly.
And that one seems pretty obvious, right?
It is. By reducing waste, conserving resources, minimizing emissions, circularity is a powerful tool for combating climate change.
And Jensen actually highlights some pretty impressive stats in the book.
He does. He talks about how the Ellen MacArthur Foundation found that adopting a circular economy could significantly reduce global CO2 emissions.
That's huge. And it's not just about emissions, it's about reducing our overall impact on the planet.
Exactly. It's about creating a more sustainable future for all.
So there you have it, the 8 advantages of circular business models. It's a pretty compelling case.
It is. And it's exciting to see so many companies embracing these principles and proving that sustainability and profitability can go hand in hand.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about all the good stuff, but I think it's important to acknowledge that there are also challenges on the road to circularity.
Oh, absolutely. Jensen dedicates a good chunk of the chapter to outlining those challenges, and I think it's important to address those as well.
All right, so we've talked about the advantages of circular business models, but as with any major shift, there are going to be challenges, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, Jensen doesn't sugarcoat it in his book. He lays out some of the key hurdles that companies face when they're trying to transition to a circular model.
Which I think is important to talk about because, it's not always going to be easy.
No, it's not a simple flip of a switch.
Yeah.
Right? You're talking about fundamental changes to the way a business operates.
Exactly. So what are some of those challenges? What comes to mind first?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is just changing mindsets, both internally and externally.
Right, so getting buy-in from employees, from customers.
Exactly. We've been living in a linear economy for so long that it's hard to break out of that take, make, dispose mentality.
It's true. We're so used to just buying something, using it for a while, and then tossing it out.
Yeah, right. And so to really embrace circularity, you need to get people thinking differently about the products they buy, the way they use them, what happens to them at the end of their life.
And that's not always an easy conversation to have.
No, it's not. It takes time, education,
Right.
Really demonstrating the value of circularity.
Okay, so mindset is a big one. What else?
Well, another challenge is just the complexity of it all. Circularity involves so many different moving parts.
Yeah, you've got design, manufacturing, logistics, reverse logistics.
Exactly. And all of these things need to work together seamlessly to create a truly circular system.
And that requires a lot of coordination, collaboration.
It does. And it can be especially challenging for large companies with complex supply chains.
Right, because you're not just changing your own operations, you're also trying to influence the behavior of your suppliers, your partners, your customers.
Exactly. It's a whole ecosystem that needs to shift.
Okay, so we've got mindset, we've got complexity. What other challenges did Jensen highlight?
Well, he also talks about the need for new technologies and infrastructure.
Right, because circularity often relies on things like data tracking, smart sensors, all that.
Exactly. And that can be a significant investment, especially for smaller companies.
And then there's the whole issue of regulations and standards.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Governments are starting to implement policies to promote circularity, but it's still a bit of a Wild West out there.
In terms of
consistency.
Yeah.
Having clear guidelines that everyone can follow.
Right, because if every country or region has its own set of rules, it just makes things more difficult.
It does, and it can create barriers to trade and innovation.
Okay, so those are some of the key challenges. What about solutions? How do companies overcome these hurdles?
Well, I think the first step is just awareness. Educating yourself about the principles of circularity, the challenges, the opportunities.
Right, understanding the landscape.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it's about starting small, Experimenting with different circular initiatives, seeing what works, what doesn't.
Like a pilot program.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then scaling up those successes.
And there are resources available to help companies with this, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are organizations like the Ellen MacArthur Foundation that provide guidance tools, case studies, all sorts of support.
So companies don't have to go it alone.
No, they don't. And I think that's really important because this is a shift that we need to make together.
It's a collective effort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We all have a role to play in creating a more circular economy.
Consumers, businesses, governments, everyone.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things that makes the circular economy so exciting. It's not just about changing the way businesses operate. It's about changing the way we live our lives.
It's a systemic shift.
It is. And it has the potential to create a world that's more sustainable, more equitable, more prosperous for all.
That's a great note to end on. So I want to thank you for joining us today for this deep dive into Henrik H. V. Jensen's book. It's been a fascinating conversation.
It has. And thank you for having me.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but we've only just scratched the surface of the circular economy.
There's so much more to explore.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to keep learning, keep asking questions, keep pushing for change.
Because together we can create a future where sustainability and prosperity go hand in hand.
Until next time, keep thinking circular.
I hope today's discussion helped you see how circular business models reshape value creation, capture, and delivery, not just for sustainability, but as a competitive advantage. I do hope you noticed 3 things. Value creation in the circular economy is continuous. Instead of a one-time sale, businesses should focus on long-term customer relationships, product durability, and lifecycle services to maximize revenue. Capturing value requires a new mindset. Instead of discarding products, businesses can recover value through reuse, repair, refurbishment, and remanufacturing, generating multiple income cycles from the same product. And third, service-based business models will define the future, shifting from ownership to subscription, leasing, or pay-per-use models can create predictable revenue streams and deeper customer loyalty. The circular economy is evolving rapidly, and businesses that understand this value shift today will be the leaders of tomorrow. That's why I continue to add new insights and updates at circularpathwaysbook.com. Until next time, keep rethinking value, keep innovating, and keep building a more competitive circular future.